I'm Teisha with Shalom TV's news update for Tuesday, March the 4th, 2014. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met yesterday at the White House with U.S. President Barack Obama. Speaking to the press, the president reiterated the U.S.'s bipartisan support for Israel and its security and publicly thanked the Israeli Prime Minister for his efforts towards the peace process.
I want to commend publicly the efforts that Prime Minister Netanyahu has made in very lengthy and painstaking negotiations with my Secretary of State, John Kerry, Abu Mazen. They are tough negotiations. The issues are profound. Obviously, if they were easy, they would have been resolved many years ago, but I think that Prime Minister Netanyahu has approached these negotiations with a level of seriousness and commitment that reflects his leadership and the desire for the Israeli people for peace. It's my belief that ultimately it is still possible to create two states, a Jewish state of Israel and a state of Palestine, in which people are living side by side in peace and security. But it's difficult, and it requires compromise on all sides.
Netanyahu, in turn, thanked the president for the opportunity to meet with him and addressed several issues, including preventing Iran from achieving nuclear weapons, saying that no nation has a greater stake in this threat than Israel. Regarding peace efforts with the Palestinians, Netanyahu said that Israel wants peace and has made many concessions for peace over the years, but that all they have gotten from the Palestinian side in return is rocket attacks, terror attacks, and continuous incitement against it.
Israel has been doing its part, and I regret to say that the Palestinians haven't. Now, I know this flies in the face of conventional wisdom, but it's the truth. And the people of Israel know that it's the truth because they've been living it. What they want is peace. What we all want fervently is peace. Not a piece of paper, although that too, but a real peace, a peace that is anchored in mutual recognition of two nation states that recognize and respect one another, and solid security arrangements on the ground. Mr. President, you rightly said that Israel, the Jewish state, is the realization of the Jewish people's self-determination in our ancestral homeland. So the Palestinians expect us to recognize a Palestinian state for the Palestinian people, a nation state for the Palestinian people. I think it's about time to recognize a nation state for the Jewish people.
And today, Prime Minister Netanyahu gave the keynote speech at the American Israel Public Affairs Committee's annual policy conference on the closing day. During the address, the Prime Minister thanked the conference for their consistent support for Israel and also thanked Ambassadors Dan Shapiro, Ron Prosor, and Ron Dermer for safeguarding the most precious alliance in the world, that between Israel and the U.S. Netanyahu said he had come to the AIPAC conference to draw a clear line. The line between life and death, between right and wrong, between blessings of a bright future and a dark past. Speaking specifically about the line between Israel and its humanitarian and compassionate efforts, like, for example, Israel's field hospital on the border with Syria that treats Syrians wounded in the crisis there, and forces like Iran backing the violence in Syria and consistently calling for the destruction of Israel.
That border that runs 100 yards east of that field hospital is the dividing line between decency and depravity, between compassion and cruelty. On the one side stands Israel, animated by the values we cherish. And here's my point. Iran continues to stand unabashedly on the wrong side of the moral divide. And that's why we must continue to stand unequivocally on the right side of that divide. We must oppose Iran and stand up for what is right.
In further addressing the Iranian threat, Netanyahu referred to the Holocaust.
Because letting the worst terrorist regime on the planet get atomic bombs would endanger everyone, and it certainly would endanger Israel, since Iran openly calls for our destruction. 70 years ago, our people, the Jewish people, were left for dead. We came back to life. We will never be brought to the brink of extinction again.
Regarding peace, Netanyahu said it was Israel's highest aspiration and that Israel was ready to make a historic peace with Palestinian neighbors, ending a century of conflict and bloodshed.
Just as Israel is prepared to recognize a Palestinian state, the Palestinians must be prepared to recognize a Jewish state. President Abbas recognized the Jewish state. And in doing so, you would be telling your people, the Palestinians, that while we might have a territorial dispute, the right of the Jewish people to a state of their own is beyond dispute.
Netanyahu also slammed the BDS movement, saying that those who support the movement, which he said really stands for bigotry, dishonesty, and shame,
those who wear the BDS label should be treated exactly as we treat any anti-Semite or bigot. They should be exposed and condemned. The boycotters should be boycotted.
he said, ending his speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, my friends, never forget, America and Israel stand for life. We stand together on the right side of the moral divide. We stand together on the right side of history. So stand tall, stand strong, stand proud.
And U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry addressed the pro-Israel lobby yesterday, where he stressed the administration's unrivaled commitment to preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon and their commitment to Israel's security and to Israel's right to defend itself by itself. Kerry also restated his rejection of the BDS movement against Israel in remarks that drew a standing ovation from the crowd.
And I believe that we need to stand together with a single voice to reject any of the arbitrary, unwarranted boycotts of Israel. For more than 30 years, I have staunchly, loudly, unapologetically opposed boycotts of Israel, and I will continue to oppose those boycotts of Israel. That will never change.
Kerry also pushed back at criticism leveled against him by some over his nonstop peace efforts in the region, which some have called obsessive. Kerry said he's been asked why he goes to Israel so often, which he said is the wrong question to ask. He said, "This isn't about me, this is about the dreams of Israelis and the dignity of Palestinians." The Times of Israel reports that the Palestinians said that they will only agree to extend the time frame for peace talks with Israel if Israel halts construction in the settlements and frees more Palestinian prisoners. PA President Abbas reportedly told Israeli Knesset member Zahava Gal'on, who heads the Meretz Party, during a meeting between the two in Ramallah, that if negotiations failed, he would, quote, put the keys on the table and turn to international institutions. Abbas is scheduled to meet with U.S. President Obama at the White House on March the 17th to discuss a framework agreement that would extend peace talks with Israel beyond the upcoming deadline at the end of April. And turning to some local Israeli news, Israeli Air Force jets hit a terror target in northern Gaza overnight, late last night, striking a terror cell that was about to launch a rocket on southern Israel. The IAF strike followed a rocket warning siren that was sounded in the Ashkelon area last night, likely brought on by a rocket that was launched from Gaza but did not successfully cross over into the Israeli side. Palestinian media reported that a Palestinian member of Islamic Jihad was killed in the overnight IAF strike. Meanwhile, the Jerusalem Post reports that the IDF's Homefront Command says it plans to release a new app for smartphones, allowing its citizens to receive emergency alerts based on their geographic location. The app is called iOref. Oref is Hebrew for Homefront. It will use GPS location data on smartphones to send alerts and warned civilians to head for safety or shelters in the event of rocket attacks. Users will also be able to track alerts for 3 additional areas beyond their own location, allowing parents, for example, to see what's happening at the location of their children. The app is scheduled for release by the end of June. It will later be available for home computers as well. Canada has accepted the recommendation of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development today to officially recognize Jewish refugees who were displaced from the Middle East and North Africa after 1948. The committee had issued a report last November on the issue, saying that they learned of the discrimination and difficulties faced by Jews living in that part of the world, noting that almost all of the Jews in Algeria, Egypt, Iraq, Lebanon, Libya, Morocco, Syria, Tunisia, and Yemen ultimately had to leave their homes, which had existed in the region for centuries. Israel, together with American Jewish organizations, have urged that the Jewish refugee issue be considered together with the Palestinian refugee issue during peace talks. The Canadian report stresses that, quote, recognition of the experiences of Jewish refugees does not diminish or compete with the situation of Palestinian refugees. The Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs said the report represented the, quote, culmination of a substantial, all-party examination of the historic suffering of Jewish communities across the region. CIJA Chair David Kajitsky welcomed today's decision, which he said brings Canada one step closer to recognizing the otherwise forgotten persecution of Jewish minorities across the Middle East. Kajitsky said this is not only a matter of ensuring historical accuracy. Once implemented, it will correct a fundamental imbalance in a Canadian policy that acknowledges Arab refugees but makes no mention of Jewish refugees resulting from the Arab-Israeli conflict. And turning to our Shalom TV programming for Tuesday, March the 4th at 8 o'clock tonight, Jill Hammer, Oron Horn, and Peter Pitzel from the Academy of Jewish Religion discuss how one reads Torah. And then at 9 o'clock, Rabbi Harold Schulweiss joins Mark Golub on L'chaim. That's tonight here on Shalom TV and ShalomTV.com. And that's Shalom TV's news update for Tuesday, March the 4th, 2014. I'm Teisha Bader.